My name is Evgeny Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. On the 26th of October, Georgia held parliamentary elections which resulted in the victory of Georgian Dream, a political party that is constantly accused of pro-Russian views and alignment with the Kremlin. The opposition did not recognize the results of the vote and claimed numerous falsifications at polling stations. To discuss these elections and other related topics, we are joined today by the member of Lithuanian Parliament, Žygimantas Pavilionis. Hello, Žygimantas, and thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure, always.
So, first of all, what's your take on everything that has already happened and is still happening in Georgia these days?
Well, it's very sad. We were standing with Georgia from Rose Revolution. I was one of the first international guests, together with many Americans, Poles, Germans, who flew into Poland and, into Georgia and started to help them from the very beginning. And they were champions of the process. They were number one to go to NATO, number one to go to the EU, but they also experienced also ignorance of the West. Together with late Lech Kaczynski, we've been fighting for their membership in NATO and Bucharest NATO summit, and then Germans and French said no. Then we remember what happened. Russians occupied them. They were second after Chechnya to be occupied in this way, and it resulted into trauma, into kind of, some say, Stockholm syndrome. They elected kind of Russia-related oligarch who owns the state, and instead of now using the opportunities that are opened by Ukrainian-Russia war and Ukraine-Moldova, they start accession talks. Instead, Georgia is like shooting themselves in the foot every year with Russian law, with many other steps, with insults, with very pro-Russian, pro-Chinese, pro-oligarch, pro-autocracy positions that sometimes it seems that this oligarch is doing it on purpose, just to make us nervous. So some people say those are last weeks of democracy in Georgia. It's already for 12 years. The rule of that oligarch continues. And if we do nothing, if Georgia does nothing, it will be more and more swollen into kind of Russian pocket and more and more going Belarusian way.
Okay, so you say if we do nothing, what could we do then?
There are two options of the West here. One West is Orban, who went to Hungary and shake the hand of Georgian Dream. Well, I don't call them dream, I call them nightmare. So shaking the hands of this nightmare, more or less trying to create another Hungary. I was negotiating my own accession to EU. It's enough to have one little hand, one little veto, because accession talks, this is intergovernmental conference. This is not majority voting. It's enough to have one Austria, one Lithuania, one Latvia to say no, and you are not member. So Orban way is not the way, because actually Orban is the only one. Okay, maybe some other 2-3 countries can support him, but not the majority. And there is another way, there is a Baltic way, there is a Polish way. You just do reforms, you try to be as best as you can, and you can maybe enter EU, like I think Moldova will be the champion, new champion, that might enter EU before 29, before we elect new European Commission or say, appoint new European Commission or elect new European Parliament. Maybe Ukraine will be also there. But Georgia, with this type of behavior, they will be not only pariah, they will be, you know, even Armenia can catch up better than them. Armenian government is showing a lot of enthusiasm. We are opening doors to Armenia, but physical door for Armenia to Europe is Georgia. Even Tbilisi is built by many Armenians. So maybe that's a good way to punish Armenia for Russia, to take Georgia into their own orbit. And remember that Ukrainians defeated Black Sea Fleet. So Georgian ports might be very good for Russia to circumvent sanctions and to supply goods, sanctioned goods against Ukrainians. So a war victim becomes the best friend of evil of Axis. And this is so sad to see, this champion of Rose Revolution to become Russian slave #1 in the region.
So, okay then, how do you imagine Georgian parliament's work right now after these elections?
It will be paralyzed because opposition is not going to this parliament where election seems stolen. So the only remaining democratic institution is Georgian president, who is inviting us, members of parliament, from Baltic states, Nordic states, Poland. It will be Bogdan Klich soon, Germans, French, Italian, Spanish. We will go and meet her next Monday in Tbilisi. We will discuss the ways how to help. But EU should react to this vote steal. EU should think even more seriously about sanctioning this oligarch who has a lot of money in the West, in France including. And those oligarchs usually think only about their own pockets, not about the country. So if we use those instruments against similar oligarchs in Moldova like Plokhotnyuk, why don't we use it against Bidzina, who is just a Russian oligarch? And we could freeze the funds to government that very much depend on our funds. A lot of reforms were done with our hands and our financial assistance. And we could even consider banning the visa-free regime, where many Georgians, including those with diplomatic passports, those who are serving Bidzina, enjoying even today in Vilnius or in Warsaw.
Okay, how likely is this to happen?
We will push for that. At least I'm preparing a statement that will be released soon by many parliaments of EU supporting this line. I know that this line is supported by America, but by which America? By democratic America.
You've already mentioned that you were in Georgia, and I really know that you were in Georgia many times, and you were amongst the few Lithuanian politicians, if not the only one, that visited Georgia. And even though you saw the situation from the inside, don't you think that your point of view cannot be objective, as you spoke mainly to representatives of the opposition?
We always try to meet opposition and position, but for years already government doesn't even want to meet with us because they ask us to choose between them and opposition. But how can we choose? In democracy, you have different opinions. Like in Lithuania, we lost elections, we go to opposition. This is normal to lose. This is normal to win. This is the people's voice. And, left and right, usually represents parts of society, and on security and defense, we usually work together. In Georgia, you have to choose. If you meet opposition, if you go to conferences where they also criticize government, they close all the doors. But this is not Moscow. This is not Beijing. This is Georgia. And even during I was beloved Deputy Foreign Minister of President Adamkus. I traveled so many times to Georgia. And even during Saakashvili period, we always met with opposition, always. Though Saakashvili was not always inspired by that.
Yes, sure.
But we wanted to show that this is the way how democracy works. You have to respect different opinion, because this is the country. You have to be bipartisan if you want to win your fight with occupants, with empire regimes, and you want to go to the West. Left and right in Lithuania was working like that, always, and that was our secret of success. If you go partisan only, then Russians are dividing and ruling you. This is old empire tactics.
Why I asked is because I've read those in the news, and you were actually the main hero of those news. When Georgian Dream had some complaints about your activities in Georgia when you came there, and they really said that you're not doing good. So what would you say to that right now after so many years?
Actually, this is very Soviet tactics of accusing anyone who comes to the country and tries to say something critical against the government. But actually, in each country, you have people like that. For example, it's not only me. In Lithuanian case, we have another slogan cooked by Georgian Dream. It's collective Kubilius.
Okay.
It means current Commissioner Kubilius, who will be responsible for defense industry, who might one day go to Georgia and smile to their faces. And I would really love to be at that moment where Kubilius meets Georgian Prime Minister.
So you're already planning your airplane tickets, I guess.
Yeah, but in each country you have people like that who were accused. Like last time in Tbilisi, I was speaking in this big square where our presidents were speaking in 2008. With me, it was German Social Democrat leader, chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael Roth. He's Social Democrat. And he said something about freedom and democracy. Now he's incarnation of evil. To call German Social Democrat the worst person, Bogdan Klich, one of those great Polish dissidents, was with me, and he will travel with me soon again to Tbilisi. Or Pavel Fischer, who was right hand of Havel. To think that they are wrong, to think that opposition is all wrong and only Georgian nightmare is right, it's very Soviet.
2 days after the elections, a rally against the Georgian Dream was held in Tbilisi, and more than 20,000 people attended it. So, however, unlike other street actions of the last 2 years, this protest was a peaceful one, like in Belarus in 2020. So, in your mind, does those peaceful protests make sense nowadays, or democracy should be with guns and stones in our hands?
Democracy is not something given. You have to fight for freedom every day. If Georgians fight, they will get that freedom. And I remember the words of former member of European Parliament, former Solidarność leader Fotyga, Anna Fotyga, former foreign minister. She told it to Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya just after the Belarusian Revolution. She said, Svetlana, be patient. Our road to freedom was 9 years. From Solidarność to first elections, it took the period of martial law. It was very difficult, but we survived because we fought. So fight, be patient. So the same about Georgian freedom. They have to fight. We will be waiting in EU and NATO because Georgia is an old European nation, biblical nation, at the cradle of civilization. But they have to make right choices. Europe is something earned. Europe is not. Also, it's not given. It's a chance to transform yourself. It's a wonderful opportunity to become great. But it's your choice. You can become Orban, or you can become Baltic states and Poland. And I really hope that Georgians living in this situation, they understand. It's either Europe or occupation. If you live in our territory, the only chance is to go to the West as soon as you can, or you become Belarus. And those are the words of my first foreign minister, Saudargas. I was a young student, and he was addressing my party of Christian Democrats, who were not sure, shall we go to Europe or not? He said, either we go now, we follow our Polish brothers and sisters, or we become Belarus.
Well, okay, Žygimantas, let's hope, Georgia, for the best and see what next couple of years bring us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was a member of Lithuanian Parliament, Žygimantas Pavilionis. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.